flagging business confidence is no longer the elephant in the room for the Prime Minister, but a big, massive, flashing neon sign. Jacinda Ardern made a direct pitch to an Auckland business audience this morning in a bid to convince them the coalition government's economics agenda is what they campaigned on and is not going to make it harder to do business. She's also announced an advisory council led by Air New Zealand CEO Christopher Luxon, who'll join us later on Checkpoint to give business leaders a direct line to government. Opposition leader Simon Bridges says it's just another working group. Our political editor Jane Patterson was there at the breakfast this morning when they were doing Getting to Know You, and Jane filed this report.
I'd like to ask you to please join me in welcoming to the stage, fresh from presenting the Bledisloe Cup on Saturday night, the Right Honourable Jacinda Ardern.
It was a polite but rather cool reception for the Prime Minister, who left no one wondering why she was there.
I've changed my mind on the issue of business confidence. It is not the elephant in the room. It's a flashing great neon sign with giant lights and fireworks going off behind it. We are all talking about it. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Business confidence is at a 10-year low, with a leading survey showing almost half of firms expecting an economic slowdown. Ms Ardern went through the government's plans, including this promise about planned fair pay agreements that would set minimum terms and conditions across a whole industry, a bone of contention for business. She acknowledged that while the policy is being developed, it leaves room for speculation and concern about the unknown.
It's why I'm confirming today that there will be no more than 1 or 2 fair pay agreements concluded during this term of office. They will be in industries and sectors that have low pay and in which the workers are vulnerable and regularly exploited. The vast bulk of you in this room will remain unaffected by these agreements.
In his introductory remarks, the head of Westpac New Zealand, David McLean, said a surprise election result and general uncertainty had weighed on business confidence. He said that was partly because key policy changes in areas like industrial relations were not yet clear.
But in my view, it's also time for the business community to get over the election result and just get on with business. Getting on with business means taking up the offer from the government to constructively engage. It means not talking ourselves into a self-fulfilling spiral of doom and gloom which could have adverse economic consequences for all New Zealanders.
Business leaders at the breakfast speech were asked why confidence is so low and what the government has to do to restore it.
I don't know that it's stubbornly low. I just think people are wanting to see what the future holds. And so while you have uncertainty, people just fill that void. They start to think about what it could be. So they just need to have more clarity around what will come next.
Well, I think the Prime Minister expressed it really well that they've had to come into the government with and start a policy agenda from scratch, and that just takes time, so she acknowledged that. I think secondly, the number of reviews that are underway provides uncertainty, and the Prime Minister highlighted that as being an issue for business. Businesses don't like uncertainty. Well, I think the Prime Minister laid out a couple of good issues that she's tackling. One is to set up a council, a national council, where businesses and government can talk together about resolving those sorts of things. So communication fundamentally is helpful.
I just think change is a big thing for people. I know in our space we just keep doing what we're doing and getting in there and doing the best that we can. And I just think it's that change and uncertainty always puts people on the back foot. But I think the guys put it right. We've just got to get on with it and keep moving forward, and that's what we're trying to do.
Air New Zealand CEO Christopher Luxon will head the advisory council, with the other 10 to 15 members yet to be named. He says having a direct line to the government will help alleviate business concerns, but he did believe some of that has been exaggerated.
I think it's been overblown, if I'm really honest. I sit running a business that actually has a lot of leading activity indicators around economic activity in this country, and I can tell you the outlook for Air New Zealand is incredibly strong, as I see it in other businesses as well. This is really an opportunity for us to take a step back, and as business leaders and as a new generation of business leaders, we actually want the country to succeed economically, socially and environmentally.
Standing alongside him, Ms Ardern acknowledged the government's communication with business to date had been ad hoc.
There's no formal structure. Of course, we engage in meetings with the business community. I've done that since the very beginning as my role as an MP. But like we have with the local government forums, I've seen benefit in actually formalising those arrangements co-designing some of the areas where we might work together on, and having that formal structure works well for local government. I think it will work well for business.
The National Party leader Simon Bridges dismissed the Prime Minister's speech in Business Council as just part of a hollow charm offensive.
What the Prime Minister is doing is doubling down on this view that if she keeps on messaging, if she charms, if she keeps talking about relationships, that's somehow going to stem the plummeting business confidence and the economic downturn. It's not.
Jacinda Ardern and the rest of her government will be hoping Mr Bridges is wrong when the results of the latest major survey, ANZ's Business Outlook, are released on Thursday.
And Jane Patterson is with us now in the studio. Jane, it's lovely to have you with us here in Auckland. Bit of a treat. Westpac CEO, fairly unequivocal. Who else was saying what?
So we've also had ASB come out this week saying business can't, be a Chicken Little. And actually the headline of their forecast is, don't worry, be happy, please. And it's in the bank's interests as well. This isn't political necessarily on Westpac's side, him supporting the Prime Minister. This is a message to business that if the business confidence continues to lag, it could actually result in economic growth slowing down, which is not good for the economy and not good, clearly, for institutions like banks. So a bit of a double message there, but delivered in no uncertain terms to that business audience this morning.
So David McLean saying it to them in person, the ASB saying it in their quarterly economic forecasts. I guess banks are talking their books, right? They want people to feel confident, and if you feel confident, you're more likely to borrow. How was the Prime Minister received? I got a sort of a sense of it from your package, but what was the vibe?
People were there obviously very keen to hear from her. They wanted to hear directly about what the government planned to do and exactly how that would look like for business. Now, she didn't give away anything clearly more than the government has already laid out publicly, except to guarantee that the fair pay agreements, now these are not in place yet, but they would set minimum terms and conditions across a whole industry, and that is a real problem for business. They're very, very concerned about it. So she said during this term of government there will only be 2 in place. So that was one solid thing that she could say to them. I would say that they were welcoming but not rapturous. And the people that we talked to afterwards, her speech was well received. But it's different, isn't it? We'll see when the business survey comes out on Thursday. And of course, that's not necessarily going to take in this time or this speech. But, that's when business leaders, firms, are really putting across their more honest views.
Yeah, that's right, without the Prime Minister being within earshot.
That's right.
It's an absolutely fascinating story, this one, because this isn't tribe national as a rule, and I mean, that's glib of me. There'll be surprises. There'll be people across the political spectrum in that room this morning, but by and large, this is an audience that are predisposed towards national. But they have to work with Labor, because if they talk the economy into a corner, it's not good for them or their customers, right?
That's right, and they will be concerned about some of the policies that Labor has signalled. And of course, we're in the first term, we have all of those working groups working through policy. And David McLean, again, another message to them was actually it is better that these policies are well thought out rather than fast, rushed ideas that could still impact business. So there was very much that message.
Sorry to interrupt, but in terms of the working groups, was there a sense of confusion? Were there people in that room this morning who didn't have a clue where the government was heading?
I think it was more that the policy hasn't been developed. So again, the message was you may have to wait. There will be uncertainty with that, but that's probably better. And I just recall Helen Clark and Michael Cullen going through the winter of discontent with business and doing a very similar charm offensive, really going out and trying to make those connections. And that situation did alleviate. It did become better, especially as economic conditions continued to be strong. I think realistically business will be actually looking to see the economic indicators, see how the economy is tracking. But again, coming back to Dave McLean, he says if you keep talking it down, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Don't talk yourselves into a funk, because that's not good for anybody.
Jane Young, our political editor, thank you very much indeed, Jane.